Very quickly, 3 months into this fatherhood thing, I was very lost. I was very confused. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was burnt out. It was just hard to recognize myself. If at the end of my life, I don't have a family full of kids serving Jesus, their whole heart, I failed. I want to not be so harsh on our spending that we never get to do fun things or make fun memories, because life is short and we're never going to get these times back with our kids. You know I'm going to be at 60? Old, significantly uglier, and a lot less in shape. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Johnny Talks, the first episode of 2026. Hope everyone's holiday season was a great one. We're talking about something, that it kind of involves the new year today, and that's resolutions, New Year's resolutions. If you're listening to this, I am sure that at some point, if not right now, you have a New Year's resolution that you're working on. I was always a big New Year's resolution guy. I was always, if I had something I wanted to do, I was really excited to just push it off, wait till January 1st and get it done. Reflecting on that this year as it was coming into January, I really realized, I just never fully completed any of the resolutions that I set, no matter how much I thought it was a good idea at the time. And so I kind of wanted to do some thinking this year, and I sat down and I reflected, why was it that I have so much trouble with these resolutions? And I think it came down to the fact that the resolutions itself were not practical. They were very broad goals that sounded good, get ripped by summer, read the Bible in a year, get rich, whatever that may be. But there wasn't any really set of systems or habits set in place to accomplish those things. When things got hard, or I missed a day, or I missed a couple days, I had nothing to fall back on. And by February every year, I was just kind of back to where I started beforehand. So this year, I want to do something different. I wanted to reflect on my 2025 and reflect on really what I learned last year. And last year, I really worked on, for the first time in my life recently, since I graduated from school, which is becoming increasingly longer, becoming more of a lifelong learner and reading and listening to podcasts and really listening to what people have to say and forming my own point of view based on that, and just continuing to, always be open to learning new things. And so I kind of broke down my 2025 into 5 key concepts that I learned last year, and basically using that to kind of set up my 2026 differently. How did I want my 2026 to look based off the 5 things that I learned in 2025? So no resolutions, just 5 key concepts that I feel could change my 2026 and on. So that's kind of what the basis of this podcast episode is, what I learned, why I feel it's important, and the application that it will have in 2026. So starting off, the first concept that I feel like I learned is that I am replaceable everywhere except my home, whether that be work, whether that be in a friend group, whether that be at church, whether that be somewhere else that I serve, whether that be in a golf group or at the gym. I am never as important as I think I am, except in my house as a father and as a husband. And it's not that work is bad. It's not that working out is bad, having friends are bad, having hobbies are bad. But where it can get bad is where we put that importance. And so this year, I really am trying to shift the emphasis of where I place those priorities, and in the order that I place them, because my family has to get my first. I believe as a father and as a husband, if you're listening to this, your family has to get your first. And too often, especially work, especially our side hustles, they can get our first. And what happens is when we're constantly giving ourselves away to work over and over and over, to our side hustles over and over and over, to our hobbies, to whatever we're doing, there's only so much time in a day, right? And what takes the hit on that, what takes the blunt of that force is our family takes the hit. Our wife takes the hit. Our kids take that hit. And so what I want to do in 2026 is not make the decision that work's not important or that side hustles aren't important, but instead backwards planning, going, okay, if my priority is my family, if my priority is my wife and my kid, and making sure that I'm there for those key moments and making sure that I'm filling their cups, I need to do some backwards planning. So instead of planning my week of, okay, this is my work schedule, this is my golf schedule, this is my workout schedule, I'm going to go, no, this is my family schedule. And then I'm going to backwards plan from there. Okay. So I'm not going to not work. I'm not going to not pursue side hustles. I'm not going to not pursue my hobbies, but my priority of those is going to switch, knowing that your job, as important as it is to provide for your family, they will and they can replace you. And that's a humbling point to get to, but it's important to realize. We're never as important as we think we are. So what I'm trying to do this year is I'm trying to decipher out different weeks and times that I need to make sure that my phone is off, that my undivided attention is to my family, and then backwards plan from there and put different things throughout the week to make sure that I'm hitting those other things. If those other things take your first priority, your family is going to be the one that suffers. And to be a good father and a good husband, your family has to be first. If you want your child to succeed in life, supporting them financially is not the only thing you need to do. You need to be an engaged father. And so oftentimes in this day and age, we're like, husband's dad, go make the money. After you do that, you did your job. Providing for your family is important, but it's not enough if that's all you're doing. If you want your child to have the best chance of success, an engaged father is essential. And that's not just someone saying it, the statistics prove it. In a marriage and family review, Professor William James reported a meta-analysis of 34 studies with more than 37,000 participants that found statistically significant effects highlighting the unique role of fathers in child rearing. Fathering had a statistically significant connection to a number of outcomes, including psychological well-being, emotional resilience, improved social relationships, and higher academic achievement. This was true for both boys and girls of different ages. As summarized by a U.S. Department of Health and Human Services report, fathers often push achievement while mothers stress nurturing, both of which are important to healthy development. It is also widely studied that children from fatherless households are significantly more likely to end up incarcerated. Now, you might be a father in the house and go, well, I'm here. I did my job. I would take it a step further, that being in the home isn't just good enough. You need to be engaged. There's different roles that a father and a mother play, and they're both important. Be an engaged father. Play with your kids. Push them. It's important. It's not just everything to make sure that they have all this financial support. Maybe it'd be more important if you made a little less money, but you spent a little more time with them. And that's what I want to focus on this year, is not being so future focused on setting them up for success and making sure their college is completely paid for. And, if we have daughters down the road, saving for their wedding. But you know what? There's time and a place for that. And that can still be an importance, but it can't be my first priority. Because if I miss out on these years, what have I done? I think about the way, as a Christian husband and a Christian father, that the Bible talks about of the role of a husband. And they relate it to the relationship of Christ and the church, and husbands taking on the role of Christ in that relationship. And when you look at that, he lived a life of sacrifice. And as husbands, we need to be able to do the same. And sacrificing doesn't just mean work. Sacrificing means putting in the time at home to make sure that your wife doesn't feel like a single mom and your kids don't feel like they're coming from a single parent household. He gave up his life for the church. And in the same way, husbands and fathers need to give up your life for the family. And that doesn't mean not doing hobbies or not doing side hustles and not working. And we're going to talk about that in a bit, but it just means let's take a priority and realize what's really truly the most important after the relationship you have with Jesus, of course. If you don't make your wife a priority, you're not living a life of sacrifice. Serve your wife, serve your kids, and let the other things fall where they may and receive priority from there. And that's what I really want to work on in 2026. Because I've never heard a story of someone on their deathbed saying they wish they spent more time at work or they spent more time on their side hustle. It's almost always the reverse, that they wish they spent more time with their family. And I want to avoid that mistake while I still can, and I think you should too. The second thing that I learned in 2025 was to fill my family's cup well. I need to make sure mine is getting filled. And I think we can do this. There's 3 different ways to do this, and 2 are wrong, I believe, and 1 is right. The first is the all about me, and you're overfilling your cup, right? You're working 45 hours a week, 50 hours a week. Right after work, you're heading to the course 5 days a week. Before work, you're going to the gym 7 days a week for an hour and a half. You don't see your kids except a couple times on the weekend. Your wife has to do all the cooking and cleaning. You're not really playing a factor besides just providing. And your excuse is, well, I got to make sure my cup is filled so I can go to work enthused and ready to go. The second is kind of how I started fatherhood, that the time for fun is over. I don't have any time to fill my cup. That was beforehand. In college, I played golf every day. I went to the gym every day. I went to as many sporting events and concerts as I could. I did everything I wanted to do because I thought that after I graduated, that when you become an adult, the time for those things are over. And so that's what I did. Especially becoming a father, I thought that I needed to be home all the time and that my wife needed me all the time. I started that for the first few months of fatherhood, really giving myself no time in any day of the week to do anything that excites me, to do anything that I was passionate about. And I thought that was the right thing to do. I thought that's what, as a husband and a father, I needed to do, to die to self. Anything I was passionate about, anything that I did beforehand, it was over. And I thought that was the right thing to do. Until very quickly, 3 months into this fatherhood thing, I was very lost. I was very confused. I didn't know who I was anymore. I was burnt out. It was just hard to recognize myself, and it affected the way that I was being a father. It was affected the way I was being a husband. Even though I was there, I wasn't really there because I was just so burnt out because I had spent 3 months trying to fill both their cups, and I was doing nothing to make sure that I was getting energized as well. I thought being a good dad and husband meant always being available. But I quickly realized after those first few months that you're not really available if you're not doing those things that are going to energize you as well. And so I realized I needed to be making time throughout the week to make sure that I was doing those activities that would recharge and re-energize me. You grow up, playing sports, elementary school, middle school, high school, college even. You're continually competing and continually conditioning yourself to do all these things that are pushing you. And then eventually one day, for me, I stopped. And I didn't know how to handle it. And so I believe that to be a good father and to be able to fill my family's cup well, I still need to take time to make sure I'm doing things that are pushing myself, that are competing. I ran a half marathon last year, and I'm not an elite runner, but when I'm training, I'm pushing myself and I'm racing against myself. And then when you get in that race, you're racing against others. And I'm not an elite runner, but it did enough to be able to, fill my cup, recharge me, give me some, primal feedback. And I love it. It feels good. And it took a little bit to not feel like I was being selfish, taking time away to go do those things. But I quickly realized when I would come back from a run or come back from a round of golf with some buddies, I was a much better dad and a much better husband than when I left. Because I took that time to get filled up, but I made sure that it wasn't taken away from my family, right? I'm not going to the golf course every single day. Those days are over. I'll get them back when I retire and the kids are out of the house. But for now, it doesn't mean I have to go cold turkey on it. I just got to schedule my time better. The important thing to do that I realized is that it's not that becoming a husband and a father, you drop everything you're passionate about. You can still be committed to them. It just has to look a little bit different, a little less time commitment. And it's also important that it is essential that you're filling your cup. But first, you need to make sure that your wife's cup and your kids' cups are filled as well. What is my wife's needs? What are my kids' needs? Let me make sure those are met. And then when I go and do my own thing, I'm going to feel better about it. And I'm not going to feel guilty or feel like I shouldn't be there, because deep down I already know, okay, I made sure that my wife's priorities are met. I made sure she was able to go grab coffee with a friend earlier in the week. I made sure I took my kid to the park that morning. I made sure I did these different things to make sure that their needs were met. And then when I can go recharge, step away, I feel totally fine about it. And the more I realize is the more I help my wife try to go do things that filled her and that she was passionate about and that made her feel recharged, the quicker she was trying to help me go do the same thing, right? The more I was trying to push her to go out and grab a cup of coffee with a friend, or go out and get her nails done, or take Brooks away so she could, just sit down for an hour and read a book in quiet. She would get recharged and she would get refilled. And then boom, she was like, how can I help you go do this? How can I help you go do this? When can you go do this? So I wasn't even having to ask to go do these things that help recharge me. The more I was doing it for her, the more she was likely to give it back. And of course, that's not why you do it, but it definitely helped. I learned in 2025 that you can be a good dad and still be passionate about your hobbies and outlets. It just needs to have the correct priority. And it was a really great thing to realize, because I truly thought that, when you become a dad, you become a husband, all those things are gone. I thought that was the right thing. I quickly realized that it wasn't. I just needed to shift the priority. They couldn't be those top priorities anymore. They just needed to move down a little bit and have a little less time commitment. I would argue that you need those passions, you need those hobbies to be the best dad you can be, because, being a dad can be tough. Being a husband can be tough. There's tough days. You're going to be days where your energy is running low and things drain you. So you need those things to be able to refuel you and recharge you, and make you a better dad. It's also good for your kids to see you passionate about things, not just work. I want my kids to know that there are certain things that really fire me up, and I want them to remember that. I don't want my kids to just remember, I don't know, the boring things about me. I want them to remember what I was passionate about. I love sports. I love playing golf. I love my sports teams. I love being physically fit. I love going on hikes. I want them to remember those things. I think it's good for their development to see that, you can be an adult and be passionate about things and still love childlike activities. And it's also important because then you can include them in it. If my kids want to play golf as they get older, I would love it. I would love to include them in that. I would love to include them in that hobby. I would love to include them in, my love of the outdoors, going hiking, going camping. I can't wait to do those things with them. I think it's good. I think it's good for them to see you in that world of, my dad's not just someone that goes to work, or my dad's not someone that just, you know, leaves at 8 a.m., comes back at 6 p.m., kisses me goodnight and tucks me in. My dad likes to do this. My dad likes to do that. My dad's good at this. My dad's good at that. Like, I think that's good for them to see. It's good for their development. So 2026, I just want to continue to focus on that. Set aside time for my hobbies and my passions. This is a hobby and a passion I'm working on. It's not a full-time job. If it did, I'd be losing a lot of money. But I like it, and it makes me feel good. And it's something that I want to get better at. So I'm making time for it. Make time to get better at golf again. Though that first year of being a dad, my handicap plummeted. Worst I've been since high school. I want to build that back up again, because if and when Brooks does decide to play, I want to be playing pretty well with him. I want to be able to go play father-son tournaments. I want to do those things. And I want to include Brooks wherever I can in any hobby and interest I have. Because again, I think it's really important, and I think it can benefit him in the long run greatly. The third thing I learned in 2025 was that our finances need a plan and a purpose. I used to kind of have this idea. I didn't really know a ton about money. I didn't really, grow up with a ton of it. My dad and mom were in the ministry for a while, and then my dad was a teacher after that. And so as a family of 6, humble beginnings. But my parents did a great job of always making sure that we had everything we needed. But what that led to is, they didn't have a ton to invest or do all these things. And so, I didn't really know a ton about that. So kind of my idea as I graduated college was pretty much the only thing I knew about finances, just try to make as much money as I could and save as much as I could. I didn't really know anything about investing. I thought it was pretty dangerous. And as I started to read more about finances and saving and investing this year, I wanted to reflect, okay, if my goal was to make more money and save more money, what were the reasons I had for that? And the more I looked into it, I saw that I needed to have a reasoning. I needed to have a plan, because backwards planning, again, it keeps coming down to this phrase of backwards planning, was something that just really kept hitting in all these different topics in 2025. Backwards planning was important. Where do we as a family want to be in 10 years? Where do we want to be in 20, 30, 40, and so on? Do we want to be people that are flush with cash to be able to do just all this fun stuff in our working years? Or do we want to save and invest the majority of what we make to be able to retire early and travel? Do we want to have a big nest egg for our kids to get them started? Or do we want to just have enough for them to get started, but truly make them earn it from there? We had to talk about these things. What do we want our life to look like at 40, 50, 60? What's important now? What do we want our life to look like now? And then let's backwards plan from there. It helped us start a framework of our financial life. What do we want to do? What do we not want to do? Where do we want to go? Once that's set, what do we need to do to get there? And the more I kept learning about money, is I learned that investment strategies isn't a one size fits all. It looks a lot different based on the lifestyle you want to live now, through the different stages of your life and what you're trying to get to. And I think my wife and I, learned where we want to be throughout those years. And as far as what we were talking about, we kind of want to be somewhere in the middle. We don't want to be a family where we never get to do fun things and we never get to make these memories and spend money on memories and trips, trying to just save, so that when we're 60, we have this big old nest egg that then we can do all those things. I'm going to be at 60. old, significantly uglier, and a lot less in shape, if I'm even alive by then. I don't want to just live our life for when we turn 60. It doesn't mean I want to ignore it. It's very important that we have something set for that, but I want to be somewhere in the middle. I want to not be so harsh on our spending that we never get to do fun things or make fun memories, because life is short and we're never going to get these times back with our kids. But I also don't want to live above our means and ball out and just think, it's all for the now. I don't want to live all for the now. I want to be a little bit in the middle. Make sure we're saving, make sure we're investing. But when opportunities come up to make a memory or to go on a trip or see family, take it. We want to be able to spend, the last decades of our life traveling and spending time with our kids and future grandkids and, serving our church and community. And we also want to make sure that we continue to be generous. And we believe that's an important part of making money, is to also continue to be generous with it. And we want our kids to be able to see that and grow up with that framework. And I think really we realize we want to be open with our kids about our plan and our purpose for how we use our finances. Because I believe that's another very important thing to teach them and that they can learn, is that money's not the end all be all. It's not evil, but the pursuit of it is what can be evil. The love of money is what can be truly detrimental. And I want our kids to learn that from us. So in 2026, I want to continue to set a good balance of spending, saving, generosity, and investing, so that as a family, we can be in the correct spots that we are trying to be in and truly set our family up for success. So that's what 2026 looks like for us financially. To continue to learn, continuing not to think that we know it all, but also when we do learn some things about investing or whatever, not just throwing everything at a wall and hoping it sticks, but being smart about it, spreading things out here and there, and just being generous as well. Fourth thing I learned in 2025 was that the best goals, plans, procedures, and habits are the ones that you're actually going to do. Our pastor says it all the time. He goes, people always ask me, what's the best Bible reading plan? The best Bible reading plan you can do is the one you're actually going to do, as silly as that sounds. Same with working out, saving, morning, night routines. The best of all those things that you're going to do for yourself is the one that you're actually going to be able to accomplish. Now, extravagant goals are fine, but they're just that. Unless you have the correct steps put in place, they're just going to be goals. They're not actually going to be accomplishments. I learned a lot about this year. Again, I tried to be more of a reader this year, which was out of my character. I read in January of last year, I read Atomic Habits by James Clear. Highly recommend. I'm going to read it again this year, just because I want to kind of get those key concepts back in the brain and back thinking about it. And what I learned from that book was that goals don't really mean anything without a system of habits and procedures. Unless you're actually completing those things consistently, you're never going to hit your goals. Here's a couple phrases from the book that he talks about. And again, this is James Clear. He says, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Success is the product of daily habits, not once in a lifetime transformation. Daily habits are like compound interest, tiny votes to the person you want to become. It's important that I realized that as much as I could set these big goals and have these things I wanted to do, I realized that's kind of what my resolutions used to be, right? I want to have a 6-pack by June. I want to be so jacked for this trip we're going to do. I'm going to read the Bible in a year. I'm going to make X amount of money. I would say these things, and they sounded great. But January 1st comes around, and I don't have a system to accomplish those things. I don't have daily habits that are going to build up and get me there. I just had a goal. And as simple as it sounds, that's what a lot of us do. I hear people, I'm obviously in the golf industry world, and people are like, I want to get down to a scratch handicap this year. Great. How are you going to do it? They don't have a plan. They just have a goal. It sounds good. Goals sound great. Goals are good. But after you set a goal, backwards plan. How are we going to get there? What does those daily habits look like? What do those routines look like? Maybe if you're trying to get to be a scratch golfer, okay, your short game might suck. How are we going to improve our short game? Okay, twice a week, 20 minutes after work, we're going to go work on the short game. We're going to get a short game lesson. Okay, we're going to work on our putting this way. Backwards plan. Here's another excerpt from his book. The key to building lasting habits is focusing on creating a new identity first. Your current behaviors are simply a reflection of your current identity. What you do now is a mirror image of the type of person you believe that you are, either consciously or subconsciously. To change your behavior for good, you need to start believing new things about yourself. You need to build identity-based habits. Imagine how we typically set goals. We might start by saying, I want to lose weight, or I want to get stronger. If you're lucky, someone might say, that's great, but so then you should say, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to squat 300 pounds. These goals are centered around outcomes, not identity. That's when I realized the problem with those resolutions I would set. They were purely outcomes based with no change to my identity. Instead of this year setting the goal to read a Bible in a year, which would be great. I would love to read the Bible fully this year. That's an outcome-based goal. So what I'm working on in 2026 is my identity needs to be a guy that loves Jesus. And a guy that loves Jesus, truly loves Jesus, is going to be in his word daily, trying to grow and trying to learn more about him. It's been working great. I don't feel the pressure to make sure I check off a day or I check off a plan. This year, my identity is just a guy who loves Jesus. And a guy who loves Jesus is in the word daily. And there's a difference. There's a flip of that switch of when it's a goal of I'm going to read the Bible in the year, it's a check mark. It's I have to do this. But when it's an identity-based, I'm a guy who loves Jesus, it no longer becomes I have to do this. It's I want to do this. And there's a difference. 2026, I'm a guy that loves Jesus, and I want to grow closer to him every day. And I think it's going to make a big impact on how much I'm in the Word in 2026. I'm looking forward to it. The last thing I learned in 2025, I got from Pastor Noah Herron, who was the last guest on Johnny Talks. Make sure you go listen to that episode if you haven't. He was great. He said, you do not have to be in full-time ministry to be in full-time ministry. And this struck a chord with me because in the past, there were times where I was super on fire for the Lord and was constantly looking for a big thing or a big platform to be able to be in ministry, some big way to spread the gospel. And then I would get disappointed when I never felt those situations arise, and I'd lose the juice and I'd kind of fall back down. Other times, I've felt very unworthy to spread the gospel. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a missionary. I didn't go to seminary. I don't have a Bible studies degree. Who am I to spread the gospel? I'm just some sinner who knows a little bit about Jesus, but I didn't feel worthy enough to spread the gospel. This post that he talked about was a great reminder that just because my occupation doesn't say I'm in full-time ministry does not mean I'm not. Because ministry doesn't just mean speaking or talking about God directly to somebody. Sometimes it's about people seeing Jesus through you in the way you conduct yourself, the way you talk to others, the way you treat others. And as a Christian, you're called to be set apart, called to be the salt and light. And so much so that I want to be someone that is in the public light and they question what makes me different. And that's a way to be able to spread the gospel, and a way to be in ministry is it's not just directly always spreading it. It's who am I when people talk to me? Who am I when they see the way I treat my wife, or I treat my kid, or how I react when bad things happen to me, or when someone cuts me off driving, or whatever it is. How am I acting? Because people are going to put you, when you say you're a Christian, you say you're a follower of Jesus, they're going to be like, okay, let's see how he or she reacts when these things happen. They're watching. And that's full-time ministry. So what's my ministry? My family is my most important ministry. And I realized that in 2025. And I realized that that's okay. And that's how it should be. If at the end of my life, I don't have a family full of kids serving Jesus with their whole heart, I failed. It is most important to me that I have a family that is fully serving the Lord. And that's my most important ministry. Because I believe the more I pour into them and the more I make an impact on them, their send-off and their impact they're going to make in the world is so much greater than I could do just individually. That's why God tells us to be fruitful, multiply, continually to pour into your family and watch how the generations change. My neighbors are ministry. I live in between two neighbors that both are different religions, very far away from Christianity. They're my ministry. They are going to see, probably more than most people, how I conduct myself, how I act, how I talk. It's my ministry. The boys I get to coach are my ministry. Now, it looks a little bit different because it's a public school. I can't come to practice and say, all right, boys, after practice, we're having Bible study. But I can conduct myself in a Christ-like manner. I can coach them up like a godly man would. When things happen, I can respond correctly. I can speak truth over them. I can speak life over them. I love getting the opportunity to coach young men. It's one of the most things I'm passionate about, and I'm thankful I get to do it, and especially being able to do it in the golf industry. I love being able to help them get better at golf. But what I'm really trying to do, deepest down, is making sure that when these kids graduate and they go off into college and they go off in the real world, they're most prepared to be successful and have a good life. And I love the opportunity I get to speak life over young men, because they need it. And I love doing it. My community is my ministry, okay? My neighborhood, my town, my region, and my influence is my ministry. And, whether that's big influence or small influence, everyone has influence. You have influence over, and we're not just talking about social media. You have influence over, people that look up to you, or brothers or sisters, or whatever it may be. It just so happens my wife has a lot of people that follow her life, and which means they know about my life. They're going to see, how am I treating her? What are the things I do for her? What are the things I do for my kid? It's can be a lot when that many people know about your life. And at first I didn't like it, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And then I realized, there's a certain way a lot of the world sees how men treat wives and treat kids, and it's not always good. It's not always godly. So while I may not always be comfortable with how many people know so much about our family and who we are, it's a great mission opportunity to be a Christ-like father and a Christ-like husband, and hopefully teach other young women that they deserve that and they should seek nothing less than that as well. So that's my goal in 26, to be less focused on always looking for these big events to spread the gospel, but to live on purpose for a purpose, and that everything we do is full-time ministry. Sometimes that is telling someone about Jesus. Sometimes that's just being a good person, and them seeing the love of Christ through you. And so I need to realize this year that I'm always in full-time ministry, whether that's, again, telling someone about Jesus, sitting down with my 2-year-old at nighttime to pray, or just coaching. I want my heart and my actions to reflect that I'm someone who loves Jesus. So that's what we're going to work on this year. And those are the 5 things that I learned in 2025 and how I'm going to implement that in 2026. No resolutions, no goals, just 5 things that I want imprinted in my heart and to show through my actions. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you were able to take something away from it. And I'm just really excited for 2026. I think, a new year is always a great way to kind of reflect on the things of last year, good and bad. How can we be better? How can we improve? And how can we just continue to live on purpose, for purpose? And that's what I want to do in 2026. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube. We need 200 subscribers to hit 500, and that would be an awesome goal. Make sure to leave a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. And looking forward to what we can do in 2026, who we can talk to, different things we can learn. But appreciate you listening to this episode. We will see you next time. Peace out.